Thank you, everybody. My name's Mike Zimbluskas, and I'm running against Jerry Nadler, the man that impeached Bush, not Trump for some reason. But I'm having a fundraiser here on the 19th of October from 7 to 9. I hope everybody can make it. But I also need your support by getting out to vote. I also need people, if you contact me, I can get you a list of Republicans in your building and make sure they get out to vote. It's going to be a low voter turnout. So if we get our people out to vote, we will win the governorship, the Attorney General, and my race against Jerry Nadler. And we will send shockwaves through this entire nation. So we have more speakers than just me. So thank you very much. See me at the back of the room, or if you want to volunteer, see my friend Vincent up there. He will collect your names, and enjoy the evening and the speeches. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Now tonight, to introduce tonight's speaker spotlight for our candidate is John Tobacco from Newsmax Television.
Greetings. Greetings. Greetings.
Just right into this.
Okay. I am not the candidate, but I am here tonight as John Tobacco citizen because us Newsmaxites aren't allowed to endorse candidates. But my co-host, Cara Castronova, who is one of the most amazing women you will ever meet in your entire life, is the candidate in Long Island. You have any friends out there in Long Island? In Elmont, in New York 22, she's running for the New York State Assembly. And I can tell you firsthand, because I'm with her all the time, and day and night we're working hard on Wise Guys on Newsmax to try to bring America the truth in our own special way. But her main focus that I've seen over the last couple of years is doggedly investigating, advocating, and fighting for people who were arrested on January 6th, mostly people who were nonviolent and never even went in the building. And I say to her sometimes, Cara, why the hell are you doing this? Do you know some of these people? She says, no, it's just not the way it's supposed to be in America. And sometimes even me, philosophically, think we got other things to do. But I see a passion and a commitment to her philosophy, her ideology, and to America that I've never seen. And I've been around politics for a really long time. She's raised, with her writing on Gateway Pundit, over $2 million directly to the victims of January 6th who were being politically persecuted, to them, for lawyers, and for their families. Some of these guys, if you don't know, have been held since January 6th or shortly thereafter, no due process, pretrial detentions, no discovery, in solitary confinement 23 hours a day. And this isn't supposed to happen in America. And time again, I've seen Cara stay up till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to get a story out with a GoFundMe link for a guy she's never met, because she knows his family has no money, because his kids can't eat, there's no subsidies for him, the community is shunning them. And over again, I've seen her get people money who got lawyers, real lawyers, and got out of jail. So to me, if you want to tell people about Cara, you can tell them she's great, she's on Newsmax, you can tell them she's gorgeous, you can tell them she's smart. But in this day and age, there's so many bullshit artists out there that are trying to run our country. I could tell you one thing about this woman, Cara Castronova. She's no bullshit. She was a professional boxer after winning the Golden Gloves 2 times. So she's taken plenty of shots to the head. So you know she's going to go to Albany and fight one-party rule harder than anyone probably that you've ever voted for. And I ask you to welcome my co-host, my girlfriend, and a fantastic individual, the next Assemblywoman from New York 22, Cara.
Test, okay. Sorry about that. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, and thank you, John, for that really nice introduction. I'm Kara Kestranova, and John pretty much told you everything that I was going to tell you about myself, which was a two-time Golden Gloves champion, so I really know what it is to fight, and that's why I really first started getting into, I wouldn't say politics, but really learning how to fight was when I was boxing. I went on to be a trainer on NBC's The Biggest Loser, where I really learned a lot of empathy for people that I didn't know, that I met on the show, where I trained them to lose thousands of pounds in combined weight. That's going back, not to age myself, over 10 years. Fast forward, to make a long story short, to the lockdowns of 2020, when the state got locked down, and I started really realizing something was very wrong. Actually, I'm going to go 2 years before that. 4 years before that, 2016, when Donald Trump ran for president, was the first time I ever voted for a Republican. I don't plan on ever voting for a Democrat ever again. I'm now a registered Republican, but I didn't consider myself a Republican until the lockdowns, because I saw how demonic the Democrat Party had become, and I realized just how unhinged they were. And they did things in the past 2 years that I find to be completely unforgivable, down to literally tearing apart families at the seam. I'm half Chinese, and I haven't seen the Chinese side of my family since the lockdowns, because they're still terrified. They've been so terrified by their own party to be around unvaccinated and unmasked people that I literally haven't seen them in over 2 years now. And I also can't forgive them for the way that they locked us out of the hospitals when we had elderly, sick people in there, and many people died alone. So these are some of the reasons that I really want to go to Albany. Besides the fact that obviously the crime is out of control in New York, the bills that they're writing are out of control, the bail reform needs to be reformed. Everything that has to do with what I think is wrong. My opponent, the woman I'm running against, is on the Health Committee, where they're now trying to pass a bill that says that you could be a teenager, 14 years old, and get a medical procedure without parental consent, which means a vaccination, any type of hormone therapy. This is things that they're trying to pass underneath our nose while we get distracted fighting with each other. I've always said they divide and distract. So I would be part of the assembly, which would be a vote for everybody here in this room, a Republican vote for the right, in my opinion, the right vote. It's not about blue or red, it's about right and wrong. And right now, as a Republican, I believe I'm on the right side of history, and I'm on the right side of things. And I'm a journalist and an activist at heart. Like John mentioned, I started Citizens Against Political Persecution. I started Liberate New York to fight the mandates and to fight the vaccine mandates. I'll be up there blowing the whistle on any bill that people aren't paying attention to, because people do tend to be divided and distracted. So bills they're trying to pass, the Democrats underneath our noses, I'm going to be up there with my journalistic intuition and my activist intuition and letting everybody know exactly what they're trying to pass when nobody's paying attention. So I think that's what my role is going to be in Albany, because let's admit the Democrats will have the majority, at least for the foreseeable future. You never know. There could be a miracle, and I do believe that in the end God wins, and I do hope it's going to be this November. So you could follow me. I'm going to do a fundraiser in the city in the next couple weeks, and you could join my mailing list at Cara, C-A-R-A, for assembly.com. It's going to be really good. I'm going to have some really special guests. And anybody here is welcome to come. Like I said, I'm running to represent District 22, but really represent the entire state and be sort of a mouthpiece and a sounding board for the Republican causes and for the things that we hold dear, to be out there speaking and using the platform, really. So you can follow me there. And any contribution, and like John said, I've raised over $2 million for prisoners. For me, the hardest thing is trying to raise money for myself, because I hate asking for myself, but as I run more and more as a political candidate, I realize it's for everybody, it's not just for me, and that if I get into office, I'm literally going to be your voice. So please contribute and let me be your voice. You could donate at cara4assembly.com. I have a WinRed page, so it's C-A-R-A 4assembly.com, and you could watch us on Newsmax every Saturday night at 10 p.m. and 3 p.m. on Sundays, Wise Guys. Also, read the Gateway Pundit if you don't already. It's one of the most fabulous news sources. I write for them. I am not censored in any way. I'm lucky if they do a spell check. literally. So they don't censor us. As long as we can prove and they trust us, if we prove our worth and trust, which takes time, we literally have complete journalistic freedom. And I've reported on numerous January 6 prisoners, like John said, and also released many FBI files that whistleblowers have sent me and stuff that at the time was giving me a lot of anxiety. But in the end, I'm glad that I did it because it showed me, not to be cheesy, but how brave I was to actually release confidential files that were sealed by the FBI. So back to my candidacy, please. I don't want to get deterred. I know we are waiting for Buck Sexton. Is he here? He's right there. Hi, Buck. We met before at another meeting. But yes, a huge fan of Buck Sexton. And please follow me on my website. Go to my social media and follow me as well. The Republican Party really needs to start sharing the word and spreading the word and outreaching as much as we can. The Democrats are doing it all the time, so we need to start sharing each other's social media and sharing each other's platforms. So Cara for Assembly, I'm on Facebook, I call it, because I was banned for life as a human being. But as an Assembly person, I'm still allowed to be on there. And on Instagram and on Twitter as well. Thank you, everybody, and God bless America.
So now on to our main event. Buck Sexton was the 2021 Metropolitan Republican Club Gala honoree and is the co-host of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. The frequent Fox News guest previously served as a CIA officer in the Counterterrorism Center and the Office of Iraq Analysis. He completed tours of duty as an intelligence officer in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as other hotspots around the globe, and led intelligence briefings for the U.S. officials. Sexton also served in the NYPD Intelligence Division, working on counterterrorism and counter-radicalization. He is the author of Occupy America Spring, a behind-the-scenes exploration of the Occupy Wall Street, including the radical roots and revolutionary goals that lie beneath the not-so-ragtag movement. Everyone, please join me in welcoming
see some of you again. I know I was here last year, and with each passing year now, post-2020, it feels like life is getting a little bit more normal, although perhaps slower in New York than some other places. Most important order of business, though, I got engaged recently, and my fiancée, Ms. Carrie Flatley, is here from Fox News. She is a producer. She is doing great work over there, and she keeps me out of trouble, which is very important. Is there a light on this, bunny? No? Okay, just going by vision. I want to thank everybody again here in the New York Metropolitan Republican Club. Thank Ian Walsh Riley and his club officers for their warm welcome. I mean, sitting in this charming townhouse on the Upper East Side, surrounded by fellow conservatives, a warm, euphoric feeling washes over me, kind of like Hunter Biden with the pipe after a long one, if you know what I mean. You know, things are feeling. Did you see the photos, by the way, on the water slide? Just throwing that out there. There's actually a Washington Post report today that they're considering charges against Hunter. But anyway, great to see all of you, and there is certainly a special kinship among those of us who are Republicans in this city, because we are deep behind lunatic liberal lines. And while the great restaurants can sometimes make it feel worthwhile, the politics of this place and the streets seem crazier than ever in a lot of ways. And I grew up here, by the way. I went to Regis on 84th Street, St. David's on 89th Street, lived at 75th Street. So not just here in the general sense, but like basically right here. I used to walk past this building all the time. So here's what I'm going to argue today, and actually I'm going to take this out because I do a 3-hour-a-day radio show, and believe it or not, I got about 3 more hours in me, so I'm going to keep this at about 25 minutes, let's say. So we're not going to, because I want to do some Q&A, and we'll go through some questions, we'll have some fun with all that. So I would argue we are in some ways in this city, and perhaps in the country, it's the worst of times, the best of times. Apologies to Dickens if I got that one backwards. Let's start with the bad times that are going on right now. There are obvious things, right? The economy, inflation, crime, the border, COVID mandates, trans surgeries for minors, the Green New Deal madness. It has all come with enormous costs in the last couple of years. Lives have been ruined, livelihoods destroyed. And in Joe Biden, we have a sub-mediocrity who is clearly in cognitive decline. This is, in fact, the closest thing we've ever seen to a Weekend at Bernie's presidency. I don't know how many of you are familiar. No one is familiar with that movie, are you? Oh, okay. All right. Just making sure. It is not a good movie, but it is very apropos for the moment we're in. So that's how we're in the worst of times. How are we in the best of times? Well, after 2 years of suffering through the idiocy of particularly COVID lockdowns, which any of you who follow my work know, I take the mantle for most angry about Fauci and lockdowns, I think, of anybody in my business at least, and for the longest period of time. I thought he was terrible from the very beginning. Some of us saw the BS a mile away right when it started. Weren't that many of us, I will say. A lot of people jumped, but, you know, the bandwagon jump on for anybody on the right in media who didn't see it. So, is everybody all right over there? Everybody good? Going once. There we go. There we go. We're having a party. It's cool. I know the wine is flowing. So, the reason that it's good, the good news right now is that we are 30 days away, perhaps, from stripping power away from and slapping down the most authoritarian, ruthless, incompetent Democrat Party in the modern history of this country. And it will give us a chance, not the certainty, but the opportunity to stop this madness in its tracks, at least for a time, until what will have to be a sweeping victory and a mandate in 2024. This midterm election really matters, and for a lot of us, we have been waiting for this opportunity to restore some sanity. I mean, this does feel like, especially here in New York, Gotham City after they emptied out Arkham Asylum. Those of you who are Batman fans, go take a walk through Times Square. I don't mean the people that are wearing the Batman costumes. I mean, I saw two vagrants having a trash can fight, as in both of them swinging trash cans at each other, 10 a.m., 2 blocks from where I live, NYPD across the street, like this. So that's what's going on here. So I wanted to go through a few of the issues. Let's get a little fired up together, because we've all had to suffer through this. And then I want to get to a Q&A about, you know, who's going to win and what. And my good friend Ryan Grodusky's here, by the way. If you don't subscribe to his Substack, I'll just say this. There are very few people, it's kind of a humble brag, there are very few people who tell me things in politics that I don't already know. Ryan constantly does. So that, for me, meaning he knows the data, he knows the races, he knows the latest numbers. So he's a resource for Clay and for me on the show, and he's here, so Ryan, yay. On crime. This is the one I'm going to go with first. I think we all know inflation and the economy is what's going to drive the most votes in this election, despite Democrats making a lot of promises about other things and trying to make it about January 6th and the insurrection. We'll get into that in a moment. What you've seen with crime is pretty straightforward. When Democrats prioritize social justice over criminal justice, thousands of innocent people are murdered and assaulted. The increase in crime is obvious. Cities are decaying. The law-abiding are fleeing. And the libs, at least the activists, the left, the elites, they don't care. They think we kind of deserve it. It's society's collective punishment. Whether it's Chesa Boudin in San Francisco, Krasner in Philadelphia, Fox in Chicago, Gascon in LA, although Boudin did get recalled, all of these progressive prosecutors care much more about getting awards from community organizers and plaudits from MSNBC anchors than they do protecting you from lunatics with hatchets and no shirts on, okay? That's the truth right now. That is what is going on. For some reason, the craziest always don't seem to have shirts on. I've noticed this. I mean, you have an absurd situation right now. I mean, you have, let's just say, people that are convicted, or rather that are arrested for attempted murder. They're let out in a matter of hours, as we all know. But the FBI will send 20 agents to go rouse Roger Stone in his silk pajamas at 4 o'clock in the morning. The FBI will tell you that they have time for any number of things that have nothing to do with public safety, like the raid on Mar-a-Lago. What was that all about again? If you look at the list of stuff they grabbed, it is truly mind-blowing. I'm minding my time. We're moving for anybody who's getting restless over there. So the crime situation is completely out of control, and I think we all understand why. Let me focus in on New York for a second. I mean, de Blasio and the Democrats did everything they could think of to destroy law and order in this city. And in 2020, they exploited the emotional panic over the George Floyd incident to push the city over the edge. And that's where we are now. What happens when you're pushed over the edge? The momentum is going in only one place. Things are getting worse. Last year, they told us, oh, the crime is so bad because of COVID. And we looked at them and said, that's moronic. This year, the crime is even worse than last year. Murder's down 10%, but everything else is up something like 40%. And they say, yeah, I guess we were wrong about that being COVID. They simply don't want to be held accountable, especially given the election that's coming up. You may have seen the New York City Mayor, Eric Adams, recently said, New York has a brand. Kansas doesn't have a brand. Kansas also doesn't have lunatics running around arrested 100 times, including for weapons offenses, and let out in a matter of hours on arrest number 100. I have to wonder, does the district attorney give them a cake or something at some point? Do they get an award? When you get to arrest number 200, do they do a little parade for you? Yes, New York does have a brand, and it's one that the Democrats are trying to destroy. I had to take a photo of this just to convince myself, as much as everybody else who I talk to about this city, a city that I love, that I think is the most amazing city in the entire world. I just want it back. I just want it to what it was 10 or 15 years ago. I am as pro-New York and of New York as any person you will ever find. I'm just speaking to the reality that all of you are dealing with. Some of you probably live within a few blocks of the guy who, there was video of this, you probably saw it, New York Post covered it. He used his car to ram another car on like Lexington and 91st, and they ran in and they drew guns and this is in broad daylight. This is like down the street from the Sacred Heart School. This is what's going on here now. So I think we've all had enough of the experiment in social justice over actual justice pushed by the progressive prosecutors. One more thing I'm just going to bring up. Oh, I was telling you I have to convince myself about this. I took the photo of the gun-free zone in Times Square. No, you guys don't understand. It is really helpful for all of the terrorists and gang members to know that they are going into a gun-free zone, and Kathy Hochul will be really upset. Can't you just see some of these violent felons on their 30th arrest going, whoa, I didn't realize I was walking into a gun-free zone, Kathy Hochul. So, and this is real. They have these signs they put up around Times Square, like total morons. I do have an ongoing bet with my co-host, or I should say debate with my co-host Clay Travis. Is the governor of New York the dumbest person in American politics today? Now, there are people who might say, Mazie Hirono wants a word, or they might point to Kate Brown in Oregon, or they might say Fetterman in Pennsylvania, although he's running. Fetterman is running for something. So this is what we're dealing with right now. And the one other thing for the New Yorkers, and then I'm going to get into the more general stuff. Do you guys all hear the Mad Max style where you are 100 motorbikes or dirt bikes at once going through the city? This is completely unacceptable. This is actually illegal. They're not supposed to be doing this. There are noise ordinances. There are restrictions on the kinds of vehicles. The NYPD should seize every one of these that's illegal, no questions asked. Go to court and try to get it back, but this is crazy. But it's now turned into you are supposed to be terrorized and be quiet. You're supposed to have, aggressive and even violent maniacs demanding money from you, cursing at you, spitting at you in front of your family members when you're just trying to go about your business. And God forbid you defend yourself. Do any of you think you could count on the district attorney here? Is self-defense even legal here? Think about that for a moment when you realize what happened at the bodega just uptown from here, when a straight-up thug with a violent criminal record attacked a man who was Dominican behind a counter, and they charged him with murder for defending himself, a 65-year-old man. So we need Lee Zeldin to win this governor's race big time. I know Lee, he's a good man. We had him on the show just last week. His promise to fire the imbecile district attorney of New York, that alone should be enough for any sane person, for any sane human being to vote out Kathy Hochul. So in case you're wondering, that's how I feel about that. And then for Mayor Adams, my good friend Mark Simone, fantastic radio host, you know, he was very hopeful. He says, I think Adams is he's a great guy. I love him. But I was always very skeptical. I think skepticism's winning out. I think he's a celebrity pretending to be a mayor sometimes. I mean, it's really not working out for us. So at least we can get some support from Albany if we get Lee Zeldin in there. And then there's Dr. Fauci. And the COVID lockdowns and the madness that we were put through in this city. Those of you who listen to my program, the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show or the Buck Sexton podcast, please subscribe. You know how I feel about this, but I'd like to remind everybody, this is the first time we will be really having a major election nationwide that is a referendum on the abject insanity, stupidity, and tyranny of the COVID lockdowners, which just became synonymous with the Democrat Party. I mean, Fauci is a monstrous little tyrant. He went to Regis, by the way. It's like, you know, he probably walks around saying, I'm the most famous Regis alum. Whatever, I have more Twitter followers, Fauci. Leave me alone. So, Commissar Fauci, just so you know, is still insisting as of today, or maybe it was yesterday, that you all need to get ready for shot number 5, plus the flu shot, so that's 6. You need to get another round of shots, because the first worked so well. Every person in here probably knows a lot of people who got the vaccine that lasts at best for about 2 months, and at best may mitigate some of the symptoms for those who are at high risk. This is the most garbage vaccination program in history, and it's the most overreaching and tyrannical simultaneously. And Fauci, the little commissar, the evil Smurf, was at the very heart of all of it. He fooled so many smug lifestyle liberals, nowhere near think they are, and there's still some of them walking around double masking. You know? They didn't mask up hard enough, folks. This is my favorite thing. When Biden got it and then got it again after getting his 5th shot, Biden didn't take the virus seriously. I don't know what to tell you, you know. Obviously didn't rub enough Purell in his hands. The lunacy of what we were all made to do. My favorite of these stories, and I might go a little above 25 minutes. My favorite of these stories, Ian will give me the, you know, don't worry, I promise, we'll get you out in time for dinner, was I was at a wine bar in, you know, as one does, over on the west side, and I'm walking in. This is early-ish on in COVID, maybe early summer 2021. And they say, excuse me, sir, you're going to have to put your mask on to walk to your table. I'm not kidding. The table's 5 feet away. It's a little place, right by the front door. I'm standing there. I walk in, no mask outside, because that's truly insane. Biden was wearing masks outside 3 weeks ago, by the way. Still, kind of, you know, doing the Biden shuffle and getting lost, and then doing the shuffle here. He's wearing but he's sharp as a tack behind closed doors. You don't understand. That's what they all say. The White House press corps. He's doing pull-ups, man. He's reciting Hamlet. Biden's amazing. You just don't know what's going on. So I go to sit down at this table, and I walk the 5 feet. I put on my little cloth mask with, you know, air blowing up and below, because, you know, aerodynamics, not something anybody thought through with this. And I sit down, and they say, I'm sorry, we also have a policy here. You can't actually take the mask off until you get your drinks. And I literally look at them and I'm like, you know that there are 2 water glasses and water on the table. What do you want me to do? And I'm not kidding. They looked at me like I had crossed the streams in Ghostbusters. Like it was, what do you mean? Water? You know, you're supposed to wait. People were forced to act like morons by a Democrat collectivist pseudo-consensus that they pushed in an election year to defeat our excellent President Donald Trump, who had an amazing economy. And, you know, it drives me insane. They were wrong about everything, and they want accountability for none of it. They expect us all to kind of forget and keep going along for this. One of my other favorite, I could go all day. I mean, social distancing was always so stupid and arbitrary. 6 feet. You remember standing in the outside, 6 feet apart from each other? Oh, they had these bubbles that they were putting kids in classrooms 6 feet apart. This was an IQ test that a lot of adults failed. This notion that, oh, but you know, my favorite though, because some of you might have listened to me in WOR. I mean, I was like a man in a bunker in the land of the crazy. And any of you who are here, you know, remember, we're all banging on the pots and pans. We love you, first responders. And then a year later, you're not getting the shot, you're fired. That's how they did it in this city. We love you, first responders, unless you get shot number 6. So, and then they fired them, which is still, you know, they just did, I think, 850 teachers fired in this city for not getting, for refusal to get a shot they didn't need that doesn't stop the spread. Who's in charge? I mean, I walk around, it's morons. Utter morons. I mean, I wish, I honestly sometimes, although they would just make noise and they're childish, but, you know, I would love to have some of those Democrat students that show up at the Republican speeches and come up and they're just like, well, how do you know that I'm not a woman? Well, you know, I'm taking a guess, you know, I mean, I'm gonna use my best deductive reasoning, you know? You don't know. You can't tell. My favorite was, though, contact tracing. And by the way, I wrote this big speech. I'm just going to keep moving and try to go. Contact tracing. I just want to remind you, they hired like thousands of people in New York City for this, okay? They hired thousands of people in New York City for contact tracing. Do you know what the basis is for contact tracing as a successful program? Sexually transmitted diseases. Now, I want you to think this one through for me. If somebody asks you, how many people have you breathed near in the last week? It's a pretty big list. If somebody asks you, how many people have you had relations with? Hopefully the list is pretty small. So they can actually track down the person. That is contact tracing. Do you remember? I remember getting phone calls. So this is now turning into catharsis. I can't even. Getting phone calls. There were National Guard soldiers. I'd fly to Florida, as one does during the pandemic. It was like leaving East Germany and arriving in West Germany. You know? You'd show up at Delta Airport and you would land, and all of a sudden, you know, it's like, oh, there's literature and ample food, and, you know, the shelves have toilet paper. I mean, it was really a remarkable experience. And I am not somebody, I think politicians are for a purpose. I owe a debt of gratitude to Governor Ron DeSantis, just as a person that, as a person who felt like at some level my ability to cling to I mean, what are we doing back there? Anyway, I mean, it's that kind of a party. I haven't even gotten to the races, the political races yet. So, oh gosh, what do we have? I mean, I'll tell you this as well. DeSantis, thank you. DeSantis, I owe him a debt of gratitude for what he did for people by keeping Florida open. I know people like to think that their governors were also standing. I'm not New York, obviously. This, Andrew Cuomo. I have an idea. I'm going to lock down everything, and you have to buy little potato chips. What do I mean? If you want to go to a bar, you must have a little thing of chips. This will save you from COVID for reasons to be determined. You remember Cuomo chips? That was a real thing. You go to a bar, you need to buy a $1 worth of food because of New York State rules. People completely lost their minds here. And I'm honestly so hopeful. Oh, one more thing. I don't know if any of you ever know of, or this place, Amherst College, where I went to school. They just came up with, I mean, they were communists even when I went there, but they just came up with a policy whereby on the first day of the semester in every single class, they are holding an anonymous ballot about masking. And if it's not even by Democratic majority, if one neurotic, Fauci-loving lunatic wants masking, they mask the whole semester. I would find that person, and the wedgie would be unbelievable. I would lose my mind. Stuff them in the locker somewhere. Anyway, it's very, very frustrating to see what they've done. They haven't been held to any real standards, any real account. I mean, they canceled, on a serious moment here for a second, they canceled school, weddings, funerals, graduation. They said COVID was too dangerous for any protests. Then the BLM riots began, and their public health experts approved this. They thought that was fine, that was good for health. Americans need to be reminded of this frequently as they prepare to cast their vote soon, because the Democrat apparatus had its experts demand that your mom's funeral service or your child's graduation was discarded. It was a health menace. But BLM riots, those were saving lives. So that's how vote accordingly, America. I mean, I think I'll just, in closing on the Fauci part of this, I think he's the biomedical equivalent of a war criminal. I really do. I would like to see him at least brought to task in front of the Congress. And I want to know how much money he made from this. And if there was any way to bring charges against him, I would love to see that happen. Biden is presiding over the most lawless border in the history of the country. You know this. I'm clapping for the truth, I assume. I'll just say this. The Martha's Vineyard flight was one of the more amazing 48 hours in recent American politics. Because the greatest part of it was that there was the initial panic, like, oh my gosh, who was this? And then there was the stories on CNN, other places, I'm not making this up, how the migrants enriched our lives. And within hours of that story, on the military buses, somewhere else. Somebody else's glorious gift, right? It was pretty remarkable how quickly that whole thing happened. But the border is wide open, and the fact that New York City and D.C. and Chicago are complaining about the unbelievable resource drain, that's what they're saying, and I think it was the mayor of D.C., which has 600,000 people in D.C. proper and a few million in the D.C. metro, went out and was like, look, I mean, we don't have the kind of resources that like El Paso does. To which everybody I've been to El Paso, I've been to the border there. There's just tent cities in El Paso, my friend. There's not some amazing program to deal with the migrants there. 5 million. Remember that number? 5 million in 2 years, officially illegally, and about another 800,000 or so gotaways. And you know what's going to be amazing? When the Census Bureau comes out after 20 years of saying there are 11 million illegals in the country, they're going to be like, well, we've updated it. There are 12 million now. To which anybody who can do math will say, hold on a second, something is going on. Look, the whole point tonight is about crushing the commies and winning this midterm election. And that's where I want to talk about key races for us. And I'll give you the broad strokes, and then if you want to know the actual numbers, go bother Ryan, because he knows all the numbers. I mentioned it before, Zeldin v. Hochul. I do think she is the dumbest governor in America. I think the fact that she wore a vaccine necklace, that alone should be disqualifying in my opinion. As I have said on radio about her, Governor Hochul is almost metaphysically dumb. You wonder how it's possible for a person to be so ignorant of everything and to run a great state. But obviously we know what happened with Cuomo. So I think I think there's a very good chance that if I was to pick one place where we might have an upset, am I right on these numbers? If he wins 35% New York City, Lee can pull it off, right? 35% of New York City, Lee Zeldin can win. That's not asking that much. He wins 25%, it's not happening. He wins 35% of New York City, he can do it. You know why he might be able to do it? Because the Latino vote and the Asian American vote in particular are saying, we don't like our streets to be war zones, and we want more cops, and we want more law and order, and the Democrats with their BLM madness, with defund the police, betrayed us. I would love to see more black New Yorkers joining in that as well, and I am hopeful that there may be some surprise, even a small movement of the black vote in New York City would be incredibly welcome and incredibly helpful in that effort to give Lee the race. I know a lot of you are following closely, but I think that may be the long shot that comes through. There's also, we're here in New York, in Oregon, it's a close race for the governor's race there, because Governor Brown, she was the one, sorry, I love all these COVID stories, who had an official policy where they wanted you to tattle on your neighbors if they had more than 5 people in their home during COVID. Call the police, because they're violating our arbitrary, you can't have 5 people in a home law. It was madness. So that's something to remember. And yeah, as I've said, she wore Hochul wears a necklace that says vaccine. She should wear a necklace that says IQ 85. So Oz versus Fetterman. I think this one is actually also going to break in our. Am I being too hopeful? I might be too hopeful. Ron. I think we actually can pull this one off too. I think you're looking at a best case scenario of a 52-seat majority for the GOP. That would be a huge victory. We're going to pick up some good seats in the House. And look, I mean, Biden with the angry old man shouting, pretending to connect with working folks and all this stuff. It's all so cynical, friends. It's all been so dishonest. They promised you unity. They promised you effective government. And what you got was a clown show with the highest level of inflation in 40 years, the worst border in modern history, the highest rise in crime in the last 2 years, since we've really been keeping stats in the last 60 years, and also policies coming directly from the White House about transgender surgeries for minors. So this is what we're actually up against and we're facing. I mean, I could go through more of the races one by one and all the rest of it. I feel like right now I've got a lot of stuff about how Biden is nasty, he's a liar, he's a bad guy. If you want, we can talk about that later. One of the great lies the media has been able to propagate is that Joe Biden is this really likable, folksy guy. He is a political hitman who will say anything. He is nasty, he is short-tempered, and he's also not very smart. He also, who wins, Hochul or Biden in Trivial Pursuit? It would be close. He's no genius either, folks. So I'm just going to say this, and then I want to take some questions. On the economy, I mean, that, by the way, don't spend trillions and trillions of dollars that you don't have and tell people to stay at home and then expect not to get horrible inflation. The Democrat Party is lighting something on fire and saying, how did this fire start? It's mind-blowing. But if you want to talk more about the economy, we can. I'll just say this. People always ask me, how do we get our country back? That's one of the most common questions I get asked, so I wanted to get ahead of that right now. And I always say, well, for how long? Because it's never going to be back forever. These forces, these bad ideas, these challenges that we have, they're going to continue. The goal is to get as much freedom and prosperity as we can for as long as we can, to keep fighting, to stay in that struggle, because the price of our republic, of our ordered liberty in this glorious experiment is constant vigilance. We can win our country back from the madness of the left if we are always ready, because otherwise it will always be temporary. We win or they win. There is no end to this fight. This midterm election is a battle that we have to take the hill in. And as I always say on my show, just remember, you're not alone. Look around this room. Look at on TV. Look at, Tucker and Sean and other radio hosts and all these people. You got other people out there who are trying to move the country in the same direction, trying to save the country. And we stand with them shoulder to shoulder, shields high. Thank you very much. Let's do some questions. I know people are tired. They got dinner, whatever. What do you think, Ian, about, we'll do 10 minutes or so? Something like that. Sounds good to me. Or 10 minutes, or we get one question and none others because no one wants to. Oh, we got some questions. Okay, fine. Yes, sir.
All right, so
just make sure everyone can hear you. And everyone's. There we go.
All right. So a majority of your speech was about the COVID lockdowns and the Democratic response to it. So can you tell me why, other than a select few of Republican candidates, why aren't the voters being reminded about the utter psychosis that they went through during the Republican reign in the COVID crisis?
Why aren't they being reminded of it? Yeah? It is a constant frustration of mine. And one that I, in whatever way that I can, try to, I have Berenson on so he can do his victory laps for being right about, Alex Berenson, for being right about basically everything, which someone thinks he wasn't right about things? I'm curious. Oh, I thought someone was making his thing. I was like, I want to know what it is, because he's like, I don't think these shots worked that well, guys. That was last summer. So I think people want to move past it. I think there was so much psychological and emotional damage to us that everyone just wants to put it behind them, Almost like it's like a car accident that you just don't want to think about. They caused the car accident of the lockdowns, though. Not of the virus, but of the lockdowns. I don't know how anybody in good conscience can vote for the Democrats who turned mask-wearing and vaccination mandates into a kind of religion, who fired people, including National Guard. So to your question, please help me remind everybody about it. It was the ugliest moment of authoritarianism in my lifetime in this country, and there was no upside to it at all. Yes, ma'am.
That's with you 100%. I was a New York City school teacher. I'm done. I love it. I was a chiropractor before that, very into health. I don't have Tylenol in my house.
Sure.
But I do have a scar on my chest because 3 months after taking the vaccine, my heart stopped. And I had to have a pacemaker. And no one, even my doctor at first in ICU, said no way. Then on my follow, I have to tell the story because it's like trauma to me. Then on my follow-up visit, he said, I said, Doc, I'm going to defend the vaccine. I do the elliptical, I this and that. He said, maybe. The third follow-up visit, it's very possible. And the fourth, we're seeing a lot of this. I have this, and I will wear it forever. But it's not.
So there is this is now fact. There is an elevated risk, particularly for young men, of myocarditis from this shot. Myocarditis is an inflammation of heart tissue, and if anyone wants to just, yeah, sir, go ahead.
I fervently hope the prediction of 52 in the Senate comes true. I think the Republicans have some responsibility in the nomination process, the primary process, for not putting the best possible candidates forward. And regrettably, President Trump has some responsibility for that in pushing some of his candidates. What do you think about that? Oh, and I would say the Democrats, in the most egregious form of hypocrisy that I am aware of in my 70 years on this planet, spent money promoting the less electable Republicans in primaries, using Democrat-donated funds to do that. And they have some blood on their hands in that regard. But the Republicans have not done themselves a big favor in certain selected races, including New Hampshire and some other states, by not coming up with the best possible candidate that was out there. And some of that has to lie at the President Trump's doorstep.
I think your analysis is correct. So I'll start with that. I think that is, I mean, we could look at race by race, who the candidates are that you would think are not in the best position. I mean, I'm hope. Right. Who was the name you said? I could.
New Hampshire?
New Hampshire. Yeah, sure. Is that Bolduc? Yeah. I just interviewed him, I think, a week or two ago. Honestly, he wasn't even on my radar until he won that primary. I have to look at that race a little bit more. Ryan, can Bolduc win? It's my numbers guy. Ryan's my quant, so if he says no, it's not within 2. I mean, look, it's close. I haven't gotten the sense that that's a loss. We're not really going to, in terms of, I think it would be unfair to say that there are subpar candidates before we see how they actually do in the general. For example, I am very hopeful that I think Dr. Oz will pull it off against Fetterman. I think he's lucky. I know you're scared. I get it. I mean, we might have to, we could bet a beer over this one. But I think he is fortunate that he is up against, if he was up against a formidable Democrat, a likable, formidable Democrat, he would have, fortunately it's Fetterman who's basically costume playing a working class hero. The guy's parents were paying his bills into his 40s. He never even showed up for work anyway. But I think Herschel Walker's going to get it done. I think Oz is going to get it done. I think Laxalt is going to get it done. Blake Masters is debating tonight. We'll see. He's up against, I'm an astronaut. I'm an astronaut. I mean, that can be kind of hard. Go ahead.
Hi, Bob. Nice to see you again.
You too.
I'd like to bring some attention to the Attorney General race with Mike Henry and Petition James. And I think after today's poll that came out and numerous other polls and a lot of support from common sense New Yorkers, I think, in my personal opinion, I think Mike has a real good shot over Letitia, finally taking out Letitia James. What do you think Mike Henry knocking out Letitia would do to the witch hunt on the Trump organization?
So first of all, I wish him all the best. I mean, I think Tish James showed everybody exactly who she is with this farcical, I don't mean unjust, I mean farcical Trump civil case where it's about the inflated asset, and this is a joke. This is just trying to pander to her base. So she's an unserious person who uses the law for explicitly obvious political purpose, and she doesn't deserve the job that she has just as a result of that. But the real witch hunts against Trump, unfortunately, are at the federal level still. So it'll help a little bit with the ending the harassment, but I will tell you off the record, meaning they were off the record to me, or maybe it was for not for attribution, I can't remember now. I've had 2 former attorney generals tell me they believe that they're going to bring an indictment against Donald Trump. Federal level. The Department of Justice for obstruction and mishandling classified. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying I have had 2 former Republican attorney generals tell me they think it's better than 50-50 odds.
Is this at his time as the president or towards the Trump organization?
This is Donald Trump in his personal capacity, federal criminal charges. I think it's crazy too. I'm just telling you whether it's on the Mar-a-Lago stuff. On the Mar-a-Lago stuff. I know. It's crazy. The libs are crazy. This is. I keep telling everybody, I just don't have the time. I just want to write a book, and the title's going to be "The Libs Are Crazy," and I'm going to explain to everybody these people are out of their minds. There's something deeply wrong with them. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, you did a very good job talking about getting rid of local and the crime. But I was wondering, because I have many friends who feel that Eric Adams is actually worse than Blasey. He is. Red. And he basically pretends he's very anti-crime. I wish I could put it also. And I feel that Eric Adams benefited from a lot of Republican support or hopefulness. And I was never skeptical. I was less than that because I talked to police officers, and he was one of the most hated captains who was higher NYPD.
I heard that too.
That's all you need to know.
I know. Look, it's not good.
Why do Republicans so easily be got out? That's my question. Why do we keep all somebody has to do is offer us crumbs, and we go right behind them?
Yeah, I think Eric Adams is so far an enormous disappointment, looks incompetent, and says a lot of the wrong things. I mean, this focus, just so you know, on the guns, I mean, sometimes I just want to high five. Your analysis of the situation is excellent. I don't think that I have much to go beyond what you said just to try to add to it. They keep talking about bringing crime down. You know what they always focus on? Other than the insurrection, which I know you're all up late at night worried about some middle-aged folks taking selfies in the Capitol building, and oh my gosh, and the guy like the Chewbacca with the hat and everything. But the reality is they talk about getting guns off the streets all the time. They want to make stricter gun laws. There was just a court case today that shows that the New York system here is flatly unconstitutional for legal ownership of guns. You know what they do when they find people on the street actually with illegal guns? Nothing. So they tell us it's about the guns. We need federal gun legislation. We need to get all the guns out of the law-abiding people's hands. And then when they catch gangbangers on the streets for the 5th time with illegal possession, you know what they do? Nothing. They don't want to have too many people in the prison population. That's this.
People being pushed off subway tracks, being hit with cameras, being stabbed.
Look, this is.
Eric Adams is just as responsible. My feeling is Eric Adams is de Blasio with the
Yes. So. Yeah, I actually wanted to point. Go ahead. Yes.
My question is in a similar vein. I feel like you're so much nicer than I am because you're still blaming the leaders for what happened, tyrannical response to COVID and all of these other things, where I still blame everyone. I blame all the masses that went along. And even with the lockdown, on day one when they said New York was closing, I said, oh no, New Yorkers will never stay home from work. Like I was deluded. I didn't know how much people had changed, but clearly people seem extremely obedient. We're an obedient and easily swayed population. What do you think happens to actually wake people up?
I can tell you that I entirely agree, and I always give credit to Carol Markowitz of the New York Post for this, who's a good friend, with the notion that I actually blame the people who went along with it. I just didn't have the time. You know, I was trying to tell some of the stories about how some of the restaurant owners or employees acted. I mean, the worst people, the Stasi of the pandemic were airline stewardesses. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I mean, the mask would go down beneath your nose, and it's already stressful you're on a plane. And there was like, why did they have 3,000 assaults on planes last year? Because you can't breathe, because this is idiotic, because you're masking it between bites. The people who went along with that enthusiastically should be ashamed. I was told in my building, I live in Midtown, and by the way, I procured a residence in Florida, if that gives you some sense of how I love New York still too. I'm not saying that, but I'm just, going to be a little back and forth because this place needs a reality check, needs a wake-up call. I'm very angry about how New Yorkers responded to this. They were complaining about me in my building because I refused to wear a mask walking in and out of the building because I'm not an idiot. And the lobby is the size of this room. There's one person standing at a desk. I have to put a mask on for this? Like, what kind of charade is this? They complained about me constantly, but I didn't find out about it until about 8 months in the pandemic. You know why? Because the building staff said, you're like one of the only ones who's nice to us in this building. So we just, every time, I know, it was nice. But they were supposed to pass it on to management and, try to get me evicted or something. What a joke. They didn't tell them. Yes?
Last question.
Unless you're a New Yorker, you must realize that people that vote Democrats vote lockstep. They just don't vote out of party. How can you, in your communication venue, have people look at not voting party, but voting for the revitalization and the restoration of the city that has had its heart and soul in the rock?
It's an excellent question and a great one for us to end on. So I'll say this. Florida just went through a terrible time with the hurricane, obviously. Basically a Category 5. I have a friend whose home gone. Not home flooded, home gone completely. And there, people drown. I mean, it's as bad as a hurricane gets in terms of the damage and everything else. The response that you have seen from a competent political leader has been, in this case Governor DeSantis, I think has been so strong that it's moments like that when people realize you can have somebody who is competent, who has leadership skill, and who is devoted to the job, and that means your lights go on faster, your check gets sent to you faster from the insurance, all the things that you need. Results-based leadership. My pitch to New Yorkers is essentially along those lines. I think it starts with Lee Zeldin becoming the governor. I think that can have a cascading effect. We are stuck with a bad mayor for the foreseeable, but I would be hopeful that would change. Remember, the district attorney, Bragg, will be gone day one if Zeldin wins. And, I mean, the one thing I used to think about New Yorkers that COVID unfortunately turned on its head was we want safe streets, clean streets, and a vibrant, awesome city that we can all live in, and we can fight about that other stuff and politics at the national level another time, but that went away during COVID. And I think enough people realize to bring that back, you have to abandon the ideology that brought this city to its knees during COVID in the first place. So focusing on the results instead of slogans and belief, that's, I think, how we can get there. But like I said, we all want our country back. I want my city back. For how long? And what's it going to take to get there? So that's what we're working on. Thank you so much all for your time and attention. I appreciate it.
Good job, Buck. Thank you.
Good to see you.